All right, we're
It
here
is on.
for Tech Talk Together Tuesday.
John and Ed's Tech Talk Together Tuesday.
Here we go. Okay, so I am freshly back from reInvent. It's a wild, not not that wild, maybe just 1.5 wild. But there's a lot of people, a lot of walking, a lot of information, and it was very beneficial and productive for the BuildStr team. So, give an overview of that, and then John and I want to talk about what are some of the tech highlights that jumped out to us. Um, so, once again, I'm Ed Meyer, sales director for BuildStr,
John Delgado, Cloud Solutions Architecture.
and we're here to rock your world. Yes. Okay. So the John, let's maybe talk about the tech stuff first. Like what jumped out to you when you were going over anything from reInvent?
So one, there's so much stuff that it's hard keeping up with all the stuff that got released for it, right? So even on the AWS has its own little blog that gives you like the top highlights of AWS reInvent 2024.
We should put that
And
link in
we
our
should
yeah.
we should definitely drop the link for sure. And so that'll give you a good overview of all the cool tech stuff that was dropped because obviously it's just too much information to process for sure. But some of the cool things that I saw drop was definitely S3 tables and then being able to use on-prem infrastructure in EKS, which I thought was pretty nifty actually.
What's super cool about that to you? The on-prem infrastructure at EKS.
So for me, and this is just thinking from all my experiences with it, being able to have like your own on-prem Kubernetes nodes with the flexibility and basically AWS's management of the control plane with EKS and have Amazon manage your entire control plane and still have your on-prem nodes is a huge win, like in hybrid compute. And so you still get the capability to manage your own hardware as far as your nodes and have everything that you need on-prem that you already had that you're already utilizing for your Kubernetes workloads and different things like that. However, instead of having to manage your own control plane, such as like kubelet, kube API, different things
Yeah.
like that, you let Amazon do that for you, which is huge because EKS has been a huge thing for the past five five years now with Kubernetes and containers and between EKS and ECS,
Yeah.
that's a huge win, right? And so seeing that, I was like, well, that's super exciting. I can't wait to get some hands-on experience with that for sure, because I'm pretty sure that's going to be on the radar for a lot of different organizations and companies for sure.
Yeah, so there's, I think in general, what are the two terms that Vogels was talking about? Simplexity and evolvability. Which it's funny, 20 years ago there was a term floating around in the no, it's more than that. It's 30 years ago. There's this term floating around called replexity, which was looking at like how in history, every time you hit some inflection point, technology circles back on itself. And so if you look over time, the gaps between these reflexive events is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I saw this graph, I think I was a senior in high school when I saw it, where it went from like loop and then like Gutenberg printing press, and then it was like getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then in the like 2000, they're like, now we're going to be like loop on loop. Technologists are always saying like, now's the time for, huge change. But I think it is really important to take this idea of simplicity of going, no, think if it's a simple Newtonian physics principle, right? The more complex an environment gets, the more entropy there is, which means you have to input more energy into the system to maintain order. Very simple. So simplicity is just like things are going to keep getting crazier, and the introduction of additional tools like the three that we just talked about are going to help increase your ability to navigate more complex environments. So one of the things that jumped out to me was the queryable metadata. So as you're getting such huge volumes within S3, being able to query the metadata for, whatever specific thing you want to look for, that's going to also help people navigate a more complex environment. So that was just
Oh
one of the
yeah,
things. Yeah.
for sure. And it's one of those things, right? Like data is one of those things that just continues to grow. It never gets smaller, right? And obviously as organizations like their cloud footprint continues to grow, they just gain more metadata, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so being able to actually perform actions on that metadata is super important across all organizations.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking not about petabytes, but exabytes of data, then you're really going to need to have these additional tools to help navigate it. So that's going to be really key. And then I think, you and I were joking around earlier, and I was like, man, there's over 100 links. And then I counted it, and it's like, no, there's only like 58 links in here. But there still is so much in their AWS news blog post to go through. I think this is kind of the springboard to me of any large conference, and specifically with reInvent, is you need to stay in your lane, know what you're there for, and then you'll be able to get the most out of it. So the being able to go back, look at the recordings, read through any of the different um, posts, and then start to play with the things out there. That's really going to be the game changer, because when you're there, you're going to be going to these different talks, and you'll see stuff that's already been in production or is new, and you're really going to need to familiarize yourself with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even now, starting this new week and everything, I'm still trying to familiarize myself with all the different stuff that was talked about, right? And so like I know there was a couple things I was super excited for going into reInvent, but like now that they have the recap and everything, I know I have to go back and figure out, okay, cool. I got to see the stuff I wanted to that I was focused on, but what else was out there just to make sure it's fresh on my mind and be aware of across different environments. So like, in addition to the the blog post with all the top links and stuff, I know there's also some research I need to go do for some of the SCP and control tower stuff that was done
Mm,
because I was like, and don't quote me on this yet because I haven't done any research on it. So it's on the back of my mind right now that I need to go start doing all of that because apparently there was some cool stuff that got released for that too. And I'm like, dang it, that wasn't my focus for this reInvent. So now I have to actually go back and make sure I do cover a lot of that stuff now.
yeah. Well, what about Amazon SageMaker Lakehouse? So I was just reading about that a little bit this morning and going like, this is really going to be helpful in terms of helping, because the whole point of generative AI is there's this inflection point that we surpassed where the volume of data that was available for training and yada, yada, yada was so massive. Now each and every customer is going to be able to take LLMs, but you've got to be able to use your SageMaker and the tools or the architecture that or of services that you've already been deployed. You've got to manage it the right way. And so knowing that they've created that lakehouse environment, I'm like, that's a big game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being able to, everyone wants to be able to do more with their data, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to unify your data across your S3, your Redshift, your data warehouses, all of that is like it's a huge win all across the board, right? And so it'll be very, very interesting to see how all of this gets implemented. And I think it's just like a natural evolution of that as
Yeah.
well. So I'm super excited to get started with that as well.
Yeah. So it'll be great. All right, switching gears. We have some cool new swag that our team had created. So these hoodies and these hats. At the beginning of reInvent, we kicked it off with a happy hour. So that was really awesome to get time with some of our key AWS partners who are going to market with us, and then also meeting some customers who are doing very innovative things. And that was a very great way to start it off. So we loved that. And then we were very focused. So we had a lot of strategic meetings with AWS leadership and looking at what our teams are going to be doing together in FY25. We met and spent time with over 26 different AWS resources. We met 11 different customers, a handful of partners that we're doing things together with. So it was a very focused time. Took your advice, John, and some other folks' advice. I only wore comfortable shoes, had zero problems with. We ended up exploring, I think at one point in time I counted it was like 9 different casinos. So all of the different walking and moving around, and all of the different meetings that we were to, never had a problem, never complained. Like, oh my God, I've been standing and walking all day. Like it just was very productive. Took I brought my magnesium threonate with me, so had zero problem sleeping. It just was and I drank enough water, so it was a very productive time. And obviously, with some gray hair in my beard, I was smart enough this time to really take care of myself, and it was enjoyable. I didn't have one moment during the whole week where I was like, "Oh my God, I hate this." So it was great.
All those years of wisdom paying off. Look at you.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it. Love it. Sounds like you guys had a great time out there and it's super productive and you listened to all our recommendations that we had out there. So that's awesome.
Yep, it was great. So, well, that's it. That's what I've got from the recap and looking at the future of the rest of this year and into FY25. It's really about taking the relationships, the strategic alignment, and then the new amazing technology offerings and figuring out how do we help customers.
Absolutely. And so we'll be dropping the links in for the AWS official recap down below. And yep, and we'll talk to you all next week.
All right.